Greetings, my name is Aurelius and I study suicide and self-injurious thoughts and behaviors. And for today, I wanted to do something a bit more different. Usually I cover topics related to suicide and self-injurious thoughts and behaviors. However, this time I wanted to discuss about the fact that I participate in the Pioneer Research Institute and engaged with my professor to complete a 71-page research paper, and I wanted to more talk about the core aim of the study and how I contributed to my field of self-injurious thoughts and behaviors and part of that community. And overall, I wanted to more of pivot and discuss the opportunity that Pioneer Research Institute has for high schoolers such as myself, and the opportunity to engage in rigorous accredited research and engage with professors. So without ado, if you are interested in more of learning about Pioneer Research Institute, about applying, about getting a need-based scholarship, as the price is steep and I received a full ride, do let me know and I can do a separate video on that. So now get into the study. To be brief, the core aim was to test whether LIWC, or pronounced as Luke, whether its psycholinguistic features can improve a logistic regression, which is a machine learning model of suicidal versus non-suicidal posts. So in other words, whether this text analysis program can improve a machine learning model's ability to discriminate between what is suicidal and what is not suicidal. And in one line, I found that Luke-derived features added an interpretable, clinically meaningful signals, and often, well, not often, but improved discrimination over a TF-IDF baseline logistic regression model. So a TF-IDF is a lexicon tool that measures the frequency and importance of words. However, once I compared that with Luke did significantly better. I'll summarize my data sources, methods, headline results, and interpretability analysis, ethical considerations, and at the very end, I will offer them my limitations and directions for future work. Let's begin with why this problem matters to me very much, of suicide and self-injurious thoughts and behaviors more broadly speaking. Psycholinguistic feature analysis for the detection of suicidal ideation in Reddit posts. Motivation in a public health context. Suicide remains a major global cause of death and disproportionately impacts young people, which makes early signal detection a public health priority. Social media platforms are a growing place where people express distress and disclose suicidal ideation, specifically Reddit. So these text sources provide a valuable but sensitive signal. Reddit in particular hosts similar semi-anonymous communities where disclosure is common and language is rich, which makes it a useful corpus for computational study. The central challenge is to build accurate detectors that are also interpretable and safe for downstream usage. Any operational system that must balance detection performance with ethical safeguards to avoid harm. This study focuses on that balance by testing interpretable features and calibration strategies. Research aim and hypotheses. The study had three linked goals. First, to compare Luke-only logistic regression to a TF-IDF baseline. Second, to test a combined Luke plus TF-IDF model. And third, to evaluate how well these models generalize across external datasets. I hypothesized that Luke-only model would outperform TF-IDF on external validation because of the psycholinguistic generalizability of Luke categories. I also expected Luke to provide consistent risk and protective markers that are clinically interpretable. The combined model was tested to see whether lexical and psycholinguistic signals complement one another. I validated these hypotheses on two external datasets with different annotation strategies. Next, I'll cover the dataset and annotation approach. Data source and annotation strategy. For model training, I used the Robin corpus and sampled annotated posts from a large Reddit pool. This served as the primary training set. For external validation, I utilized two datasets, a clinician annotated CSSRS subset and a large subreddit labeled Suicide Watch corpus. Each dataset differs in label provenance, with clinician ratings providing high fidelity labels and subreddit membership providing a broader weak signal. The size and label method difference matter because they influence calibration and expected performance. I intentionally tested across these heterogeneous sets to examine generalizability. I will note the limitations tied to this heterogeneity later. Model training and training procedure. I trained 3 logistic regression models, a TF-IDF only baseline, a Luke only model, and a combined Luke plus TF-IDF model using IBFGS optimization and class weighting to address label imbalance. Training occurred on the RAP-derived dataset, and we held out the external CSSRS and Suicide Watch datasets for validation to test generalization. For small test sets, we applied PAT scaling for calibration, and for larger external sets, I utilized isotonic calibration to improve probability estimates. I conducted a threshold sweep and reported optimal thresholds using Yoden's J, hope I'm pronouncing that right, and related measures. Regular monitoring of calibration metrics such as Breyer score and expected calibration was included. These choices were made to prioritize both discrimination and reliable probability outputs. Pre-processing and feature extracted. Text pre-processing followed standard steps: lowercasing, removal of extraneous characters, merging title and body, and dropping empty entries to produce clean inputs. For psycholinguistic features, I utilized Luke 22, which yields over 100 categories such as deaf, cognition, social, tone, auxiliary verbs, and cognitive processing. For lexical comparison, I extracted a top 25 TF-IDF token set as a baseline and also tested a combined feature vector. Features were scaled and examined for multicollinearity before training. The rationale is that Luke offers interpretable dimensions while TF-IDF captures topical tokens. Combining both allows me to test complementarity. Evaluation metrics and headline performance. I evaluated models with ROC, AUC, and PR AUC to capture discrimination and precision recall trade-offs, and reported F1 accuracy and calibration metrics for practical thresholds. On the clinician annotated CSSRS, I set the look-only model and found that it outperformed the TF-IDF baseline on ROC, AUC, and F1, showing better generalization to high-fidelity labels. On the large Suicide Watch corpus, both the Luke only and the combined model achieved very high ROC, AUC, and PR AUC, with combined sometimes offering marginal gains in certain metrics. A consistent trade-off was that Luke improved true positive detection, often at the cost of more false positives, a consideration for deployment. Calibration metrics helped contextualize whether predicted probabilities could be trusted for decision making. Overall, Luke-based models were robust across evaluation criteria. Interpretability, top features, and what they mean. Interpretability analysis triangulated LR coefficients, odds ratio, and SHAP values to identify stable markers associated with risk and protection. Risk-linked Luke categories included deaf, first-person pronouns, and certain function word patterns, while TF-IDF often highlighted tokens such as the word life as a repeated risk signal. Protected signals included higher cognitive processing language, social references, and auxiliary verb patterns that correlate with planning and social connectedness. I addressed multicollinearity concerns by examining effect size and inconsistency across methods rather than relying on single coefficients. These interpretable markers suggest targets for human-centered triage. The next slide discusses ethical deployment implications of using such markers. Ethical deployment and human-centered considerations. Using automated detections for suicidal ideation carries real risks. False positives can trigger harmful or intrusive interventions, and false negatives can miss people in crisis. Because of these stakes, I recommend multi-layered safeguards, including oversight committees, transparent performance reporting, and privacy-preserving engineering. Models should be deployed only within the human-in-the-loop pipelines that use soft referrals, not just to peer support or safety planning resources rather than punitive measures. I also emphasize third-party auditing and involvement of clinicians in affected communities when designing response flows. Any operational system must protect user anonymity and allow for appeal or human review. Ethical deployment is as important as technical performance. Limitations, future directions, and takeaways. Key limitations include label heterogeneity across datasets, the computational cost of broader model classes, and calibration challenges on small test sets. For future work, I propose combining Luke with transformer-based models and multilingual embeddings, exploring semi-supervised approaches, and running human-in-the-loop intervention trials. Additional work also focuses on exemplar-based explanations, longitudinal monitoring, and deployment studies that measure downstream outcomes and harms. The main takeaway is that psycholinguistic features offer interpretable, clinically meaningful signals that improve detection and help bridge research to safer interventions. Ultimately, improving detection as a tool and ethical human-centered systems are required to translate signals into support. Well, that's the end of it. So overall, I wanted to say thank you for sticking around this long, for listening to my research and how I contributed to my research community in suicide and self-injurious thoughts and behaviors. My research was a bit computational and computationally intensive too, and I sincerely appreciate you for listening in and learning a bit about what I did and contributed. If my viewers wish to know more about Pioneer Research Institute, how to apply, how to boost chances of acceptance, and about need-based scholarships, I can make a separate video on that because I would say that is an important aspect and a meaningful research opportunity that is fully college accredited and a very rigorous, productive, meaningful opportunity in which not only will you grow intellectually, but also personally, emotionally, and academically. Thank you once more.